So you're a foreign entrepreneur investor. You're Canadian, British, Australian, and you're asking yourself, what would the best US state be to start my very first US LLC, my very first step into my US journey? Well, in this video, I'm going to help you answer that question. We're going to look at 3 top choices in the United States. We're going to compare what you really get, not fall into all this over promotion or marketing language, so that you can make a better informed decision right there at home. Hello, my name is Javier Correa. I'm a tax director here at the Rothbard Group, and I'm also a licensed enrolled agent in the United States of America dealing with complex cross-border tax issues. So I work with both American citizens and American companies operating globally and with global entrepreneurs and investors that want to operate in or through the United States. Now, what people many times don't understand and only come to realize later on in their journey is that from a corporate perspective, the U.S. is not one single jurisdiction, but rather the U.S. is 50 states, and each one of those states has its own laws, advantages, and benefits, and so each state is technically an independent jurisdiction when it comes to LLC formation. Essentially, each U.S. state has unique advantages, unique policies, and so choosing which state you decide to form your LLC in can make a huge difference. Now, let's start with the first thing, which is taxation. If you are a non-resident alien, so you are a non-U.S. citizen, non-green card holder, and you haven't lived sufficient time or spent enough time in the United States to trigger tax residence under the substantial presence test, then essentially from a tax perspective, you're good. Any one of the 50 states, provided that the LLC is structured properly, can yield the same tax result. Now, it would still be advisable to obviously form your LLC in a state that doesn't apply any form of taxation, just to be on the safer side, and knowing that we only have to deal with making sure that we're not generating taxes at the federal level and not have to worry in addition to also avoiding taxes at the state level. But ultimately, if you plan it right, there is no difference between having your LLC in a state like, let's say, California or New York, which are high tax states, versus having it in, let's say, Florida, Texas, or South Dakota, which are tax-free states. Now, what happens with the rest of the elements that are involved in a U.S. limited liability company? Because ultimately, taxation is not everything. Again, provided your LLC is a single-member LLC, taxed as a disregarded entity, or a multi-member LLC, taxed as a partnership, you will not have any issues on the tax side. But what happens from the governance and corporate side of the equation? So this is why we're going to analyze 3 heavy hitters within the United States, 3 states that I have had the opportunity of forming LLCs in for non-resident alien investors and entrepreneurs. We're going to take a look at what advantages each one of those states brings to the table and to see exactly under which circumstances it might be strategic to have an LLC in one of those states versus the other. So the 3 states I want to focus on today are going to be number 1, the state of Florida, number 2, the state of Delaware, and number 3, the state of Wyoming. We're going to take a look at each one of them. We're going to take a look at how they compare to each other so that you can make an informed decision back home. Now, let's first talk about Wyoming. I've done other videos about Wyoming LLCs, and people somehow seem to think that I dislike them. I don't dislike them at all. In fact, I think Wyoming has a time and a place. I formed Wyoming LLCs for clients, and at the Rothbard Group, we actively form Wyoming LLCs for clients. But I don't think they're the be-all and end-all, and I don't think they're the right solution in every single case. So what is Wyoming good for? Wyoming is good for people that want, number 1, simplicity. Wyoming is quick, is fast, and it's efficient. Number 2, Wyoming is by far one of the most cost-effective states to form an LLC. So if money is tight or you don't want to make a huge investment into forming your LLC, then I guess Wyoming also has major advantages. In addition to that, Wyoming has very good privacy policies. So if privacy is something that is of the utmost importance to you, where you don't want anyone to know who the members of your LLCs are and who the managers of your LLCs are, and you really want to make sure that your LLC is as anonymous as can be, Wyoming is also a top choice. In addition to that, if you're forming a single-member limited liability company, even if it's taxed as a disregarded entity, and you want maximum asset protection from the charging order perspective, so charging order is this essentially this lien, this legal mechanism by which if you're sued individually, potentially the best thing the creditor can do is claim any distributions that come out of the LLC, but they can't really, step into your shoes, manage the LLC, foreclose it, liquidate it, or anything like that. They can't really attack your interest, foreclose on your interest, anything like that, then again, Wyoming might be strategic. So for people that need extreme anonymity, extreme asset protection, at least by US standards, then yes, Wyoming might be the top choice for those specific individuals. I would also point out that for the crypto people out there, Wyoming has presented itself as the crypto-friendly state within the union. So if you're in fintech, crypto, etc., again, Wyoming might have friendlier policies. Now let's take a look at Delaware. Delaware, just like Wyoming, offers charging order protection for single-member LLC, so it's one of those handful of 7 or 8 states in the U.S. that extends charging order protection to single members. So from an asset protection standpoint, Delaware also offers pretty robust, let's say, support to entrepreneurs and investors. Now, the one thing that Delaware really has over Wyoming is a lot of case law. And this seems to be a bit abstract, but trust me, if you're running institutional grade businesses, you like legal certainty, you like predictability. And by far, Delaware has one of the most developed corporate case law, essentially histories within the United States. So they have a specific court, which is the Court of Chancery, that is dedicated to these issues. And there's just a long-standing history of corporate disputes that are very powerful within the state of Delaware. So if you believe that you may run into a lot of legal issues surrounding corporate governance, dispute between management and members, things of that nature, that's where Delaware truly shines. Now, it is important to note that there was a recent court case involving Elon Musk in Delaware, where the Delaware courts took essentially an unprecedented and, let's say, decision that surprised many people, where Elon Musk's pay was actually capped, rejected. I don't have the details of the court case right now, and that would warrant a separate video. But the point is, Delaware's flexibility in terms of respecting the autonomy of the will of, members and managers of independent companies has been put into question recently. So maybe it's not as flexible as it once was, but it still has that reputation, and fair enough, the case law is still there. So Delaware can be very powerful for that. That is the reason why Delaware is still technically the go-to place for venture capital funds, private equity funds, funding, the next big tech startups, for example. This is why huge companies that look for VC investment often choose Delaware. And this is where Delaware really got its reputation as the go-to state for entrepreneurs and investors. So similar to Wyoming, you've got good privacy, you've got very good asset protection, and you also have very flexible corporate governance. I think this is really where Delaware shines. Even though other states like both Wyoming and Florida offer extreme flexibility, Delaware takes it one step further by offering provisions like, for example, the elimination of fiduciary duties for managers and members, things like that can happen under Delaware law, but can't really happen to the same extent in other states. So Delaware is really, I would say, the state for institutional investors, not really for the average entrepreneur, although if you want to go for Delaware, it's also possible. Then you have the final state in this equation, which is the state of Florida. The state of Florida usually is not referenced as one of these offshore incorporation states, which makes it a very interesting choice in my opinion. Florida is a state that screams, here is substance over form. It's a substance-heavy state. It's one of the largest economies in the union, unlike Delaware and Wyoming. You could really justify that there is a business purpose for having an entity in Florida other than simply tax advantages and governance flexibility, like would be the case for Wyoming and Delaware, even though, like I said before, in the case of non-resident aliens, the state doesn't really matter. As long as the business is structured properly, it will be tax neutral. But Florida offers something that is very, very nice, which is Florida offers the city of Miami, which is a major capital of finance and banking, and it also makes the entity selectively publicly available, if that were a way to explain it. And what I mean by that is, in Florida, the members of LLCs can be kept private, and the only thing that you really have to disclose are the managers, which, if you come to think of it, is very similar to how Panama, for example, operates. In the Republic of Panama, if you start an SA, the shareholders are kept private, but the officers of the corporation and the BOD members are made public. Now, obviously, if you're fiercely aggressive in terms of defending your privacy and you absolutely don't want anyone to know anything about your companies, that will be a red line for Florida. But the reason why I still believe that that can be a competitive advantage is that banks and regulators like the certainty of knowing who they're dealing with. If you have a Wyoming LLC, for example, and you want to open a bank account in the US or wherever, it's not that you can't do it, but you're going to have to provide the operating agreement. You're going to have to show that essentially you are the one in charge. They're going to have to even violate, so to speak, your privacy in a way because you're going to have to share more documents to actually prove that you are the man in charge, that you are the one who can actually act on behalf of the LLC and bind the LLC. Whereas in Florida, that problem is solved quite elegantly. You go to Sunbiz, they check out the LLC, they see who the manager is, they don't have to know who the members are, but they know that they're speaking with the rightfully and duly appointed manager in order to open bank accounts, sign contracts, etc. So from a business operational perspective, Florida really offers a very clean way to proceed. In addition to that, Florida also offers extreme management flexibility. So even though you don't get to the, let's say, level of eliminating fiduciary duty completely, as you might in Delaware, for example, in almost any other instance, there is no major difference of what you could do from a governance perspective in Florida or Wyoming, for that matter, versus Delaware. So really, unless you're an extremely sophisticated investor that really wants that VC institutional level, corporate planning, honestly, if you're not Peter Thiel investing into the next Meta or the next Facebook, then Florida and Wyoming honestly give you the same amount of corporate flexibility than a Delaware entity would. Essentially, you can still have multiple membership interests. You can have non-voting, super voting. You can have membership units that elect more managers than others. You can have economic-only units that are non-voting. I mean, you name it. These other states also offer the same flexibility. So ultimately, really, what it comes down to is what state is right for you based on your individual facts and circumstances. There's nothing wrong with Wyoming LLCs, there's nothing wrong with Delaware LLCs, and there's definitely nothing wrong with Florida LLCs. At the end of the day, it all depends on the facts and circumstances of your individual case. What I do want you to take home from this video and to take away from this video is that you should not follow TikTok trends. Just because everyone talks about Wyoming LLCs doesn't mean that Wyoming is the best option just for you. Just because Delaware has been the legacy option for years for big money related to Silicon Valley doesn't mean that you should start a Delaware entity. And just because the Rothbard Group happens to be a fan of Florida LLCs doesn't mean that Florida might be the right fit for you. Here at the Rothbard Group, we analyze your individual circumstances to determine what the right state for you would be based on your preferences and based on your own private objectives when it comes to banking and business growth. In fact, in many cases, even a combined structure might be ideal, where you have a Florida operating LLC with a Wyoming holding LLC, or a Delaware holding LLC combined with a Wyoming investment arm and a Florida operating company. Ultimately, it's all up to you. But here at the Rothbard Group, we stand ready to assist. Whether you want an LLC in a high privacy state or a mid-privacy state, whether you favor corporate governance flexibility or banking access, we're here to listen to you and to provide proper guidance and to make sure that regardless of the state that you choose, we can guarantee that your LLC will not pay more tax than legally required as a non-resident alien investor and entrepreneur. So if you're ready to talk LLCs and you're ready to talk about the different advantages of each state, Rothbardgroup.com. We welcome the opportunity to work with you. And this was Javier Correa, Tax Director and Enrolled Agent.